Good morning. You're listening to The Brief Wake Up, your mindful start to the day. I am Handel, your daily coffee companion, helping you wake up informed, thoughtful, and maybe just a little amused before the day gets old. If you're commuting, corralling kids, or just standing in line for caffeine, you're in the right place. Let's get you caught up. Let's start with our health topic. Why everyone seems sick right now. It feels like every group chat is the same conversation. Who's sick in your house? Who brought it home this time? Why does this cough last forever? There's a reason it feels like the whole country is passing around the same upper respiratory plague. It isn't one virus, it's three. And they're all peaking at once. The first is the flu. Not the dramatic movie version, just a very fast, very efficient strain that's making the rounds. Even people who got the flu shot are getting hit, which makes the season feel worse. The vaccine still helps, but it's not stopping infections the way we hoped, due to a mutated strain that was not predicted for this year's flu vaccine formulation. This creates the impression that everybody has it. The second is RSV. Normally we think of RSV as a baby thing, but this year it's running through older kids, adults, and grandparents too. Part of the reason is simple. People weren't exposed much over the last few years. A lot of that was secondary to COVID precautions that persisted after the pandemic. So, immunity dipped, and now RSV is coming back with momentum. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a brutal cough that hangs around longer than you expect. But in infants and older adults, it can be more serious. And the third is COVID, not the headline-stealing version from 2020, just another respiratory virus in the background adding noise. Not the main act anymore, but enough to make recovery slower or symptoms linger. So you've got three different viruses circulating at the same time, and they all cause almost identical symptoms: cough, fever, chills, congestion, exhaustion. That overlap is why people feel like they're sick back to back. Sometimes it's actually a second virus on top of the first. Now, what do you actually do with this information? You don't need to change your life. You don't need to gear up like it's 2020 again. This is more about situational awareness than rules. If someone in your house gets sick, think ventilation, crack a window, run an air filter, open the space a bit. If you're headed into a crowded ER waiting room or an airport during peak outbreaks, covering your face isn't a political statement. It's just basic common sense. The same way you'd put on sunglasses in bright sun. Not every setting requires it, just the higher risk ones. And the biggest difference maker is timing. If you suddenly feel wiped out with fever and body aches, getting checked in the first couple of days gives you options, which includes antivirals such as Tamiflu, an early course of zinc, vitamin D to boost your immunity. There is also symptom control with over-the-counter drug formulations, or simply knowing which virus you're dealing with so you don't spread it around the next day. For parents, RSV can sneak up on infants, so just watch the breathing. Are they feeding well, breathing comfortably, or working harder than they should? Most kids do fine, but it's worth keeping an eye on. This season feels intense not because we're weaker, and not because there's a mystery monster virus. It's just three very normal viruses showing up at the same time. The more we understand that, the less anxious we feel, and the easier it is to take the right precautions without going overboard. The news is next. This morning in the news, we report on two very different battles that are unfolding in the United States. One on the hospital floor, and one inside the nation's central bank, both having the potential to reshape how critical institutions function in the months ahead. We begin in New York City, where nearly 15,000 nurses at some of the city's largest private hospitals have walked off the job. This includes Mount Sinai, Montefiore, and New York Presbyterian. It's the largest nurses' strike in New York's history. Negotiations between the hospitals and the New York State Nurses Association collapsed after weeks of deadlock. At the center of the conflict are staffing ratios. Nurses say the current patient loads are unsafe, not just stressful, but dangerous, and that hospitals have failed to honor past agreements requiring minimum staffing levels. They argue that the system has been running on burnout and mandatory overtime for too long. Hospital administrators counter that meeting the union's demands would be financially unsustainable. They've turned to temporary staff and redeployed managers to keep operations running, but anyone inside these hospitals will tell you it is not business as usual. The strike hits during a heavy flu season, when ERs and ICUs are already under pressure. The governor has declared a state of emergency to help stabilize staffing and shift resources where needed. For patients, the situation means longer waits, delayed elective procedures, and potential transfers if capacity becomes strained. For the industry, this strike highlights the national conversation about nurse retention, hospital margins, and how far you can stretch a workforce before something snaps. Meanwhile, in Washington, a different kind of standoff is developing, this time at the highest levels of U.S. financial policy. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has disclosed that he is the subject of an active criminal investigation by the Department of Justice. Subpoenas have been issued tied to his testimony on a multi-billion-dollar renovation project at the Federal Reserve's headquarters. No charges have been filed, but the optics are extraordinary. Former Fed chairs and bipartisan lawmakers are warning that the probe risks undermining the independence of the Federal Reserve. The fear is straightforward. If political pressure can be applied through legal threats, monetary policy could be influenced not by data, but by the demands of the moment. Powell has responded with unusual bluntness, saying he will not bow to pressure and will continue to set policy based on economic conditions, not political directives. Markets reacted instantly. The dollar slipped. Investors moved into defensive positions. And analysts raised concerns about potential volatility if confidence in the central bank weakens. So today, across two different arenas, healthcare and finance, America's institutional stress is on full display. Nurses pushing back against unsafe staffing, and a central bank chair pushing back against political intrusion. Both stories point to the same underlying theme. Systems stretched to their limits, and the growing conflict over who controls the direction going forward. The Big Sip is next. For our Big Sip, let's discuss a pattern that shows up across history, politics, literature, and everyday life. And once you see it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Human beings use labels to control one another. It happened in apartheid South Africa, where black citizens were forced to carry the dompas, a passbook that dictated where they could walk, work, or simply exist. It happened in Nazi-occupied Europe, where Jews were stamped with a giant red J and forced to wear a yellow star so they could be identified instantly, on sight. And it appears in The Scarlet Letter, where Hester Prynne is made to wear a scarlet A, reducing her entire identity to a single accusation. 3 different eras, 3 different systems, 3 different motives, but one identical method: forced identification. And here's where Kahneman's The Famed Economist's work helps us understand why this keeps happening. In Thinking Fast and Slow, he explains that the human brain operates in 2 modes: System 1 is fast, automatic, and emotional. It reacts instantly. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and analytical. It requires effort. We evolved to rely heavily on System 1 because it kept our ancestors alive. When you heard a snap in the woods, you didn't stop to analyze. You ran. When you saw a stranger approach, you made an instant judgment, threat or safety. This instinct to categorize quickly and to assign labels wasn't a flaw. It was survival. But here's the twist. What was once a survival advantage becomes a psychological vulnerability in the hands of people who understand how to manipulate it. When a government, a movement, or a powerful institution wants control, it doesn't start with violence. It starts with the label. Because if you can convince people that one group is defined by a single word, if you can reduce a person down to a category, if you can trigger their System 1 instincts, then you can bypass rational thought entirely. The label becomes the entire story, and once that happens, everything else becomes easier. Restriction, discrimination, surveillance, punishment, isolation, eventually violence. The Dompas wasn't just a document. The yellow star wasn't just a badge. Hester's A wasn't just a letter. They were tools engineered to hack the fast-thinking part of the human mind, the part that prefers simple categories over complex truth. And here's the part most people don't realize. We are still vulnerable to this glitch. We do it with politics, red or blue. We do it with race. We do it with religion. We do it online, reducing whole people to a single post, a single vote, a single moment we disagree with. We absorb the label and stop doing the harder work of thinking. Not because we are cruel, but because we are wired to conserve mental energy. Kahneman's entire point is not that we can eliminate System 1. We can't. It's built into us. But we can learn to intercept it. We can slow down the instinctive judgment. We can ask, what am I missing? What else might be true? We can force our minds into the deeper, slower mode where nuance lives. And when we do that, the label loses its power. The manipulation loses its power. The people who rely on our reflexive thinking lose their advantage. Because once you see the full human being, once you step past the surface, the entire system built on simplification collapses. That's the real lesson that connects apartheid, the Holocaust, and Hawthorne's novel. When we give in to labels, we become predictable and easy to control. When we look past them, we become impossible to manipulate. That's your big sip. Take it with you today. The lighter roast is next. What's in a handshake? Apparently everything. We treat it like a casual hello, but the truth is, we judge people harder on a handshake than we do on their resume, their LinkedIn photo, and their choice of shoes combined. It's the fastest psychological scan we've got. 2 hands touch, and suddenly you know whether this person is confident, anxious, overcompensating, or just recently moisturized. And good or bad, you feel it immediately. There's the limp, hesitant handshake that makes you wonder if the person is currently dissolving. There's the overzealous bone crusher, usually a guy named Rick, who shakes your hand like he's testing rebar strength. And then there's that weird half grip where you only catch the tips of their fingers, and now you both have to pretend you didn't just shake hands like 2 ghosts trying to high five. But the truth is, it's not really about grip strength at all. It's about presence. A good handshake doesn't feel forced or theatrical. It feels like someone actually paused, fully stopped, and acknowledged you. You know it when it happens. There's clarity and intent. A quiet mutual, all right, we're here. And here's where the comedy gets better. Scientists study handshakes. I'm not joking. Real research, published in the real journals, with people in lab coats analyzing handshakes like they're decoding ancient scrolls. They've measured grip pressure, duration, palm angle, eye contact, even sweat levels. Somewhere, right now, there is a graduate student whose entire thesis is built on shaking hands with strangers and taking notes. And the data all points to the same conclusion. The good handshake is surprisingly simple. It's a full, confident grip, not too tight, not too weak. The hand stays vertical, not the I'm dominant, palm down move, and not the I submit to your leadership palm up move. And it lasts just long enough to say hello without becoming a medieval test of endurance. About 2 to 3 seconds. After that, you've entered hostage negotiation territory. What's funny is that people think they can fake it. You can't. If someone is distracted, nervous, trying too hard, or already scanning the room behind you for someone more important, their handshake betrays them immediately. You feel the truth before they even speak. And that's why a bad handshake bugs us. It breaks the unspoken agreement. Not be perfect, just be here. A good one stays with you because it's rare. You meet someone who offers the right balance of confidence and ease, looks you in the eye, and for a moment everything lines up. No performance, no weird tension, no fingertip flailing, just mutual acknowledgement. Which might be why the handshake has survived thousands of years and every technological disruption. Screens can't replace it, text can't imitate it, AI can't approximate it, because the handshake forces two humans to show up at the exact same time, in the exact same place with the exact same intention. And these days, that alone makes it powerful. That's all it is, and that is everything. Our commemoration is next. January 13th is a surprisingly rich day in history. In 1888, a small circle of scholars and explorers met in Washington, D.C., and founded the National Geographic Society, an organization that would go on to reshape how the world understands science, exploration, and the planet itself. Just over 2 decades later, in 1910, the world heard something new. The first public radio broadcast, a live opera from the Metropolitan Opera House. It marked the moment when sound stopped being local and began to travel, a direct ancestor to modern radio, streaming, and even this show. On the global stage, January 13th is also when Japan finalized the ratification steps for the Portsmouth Treaty in 1906, officially closing the Russo-Japanese War and setting the United States and Theodore Roosevelt on the path to the first Nobel Peace Prize ever awarded to a sitting president. And for a lighter note, it also happens to be National Rubber Ducky Day, a reminder that not every moment in history has to shape geopolitics. Some just make bath time more fun. Today's show reminded us that this strange, exhausting respiratory season isn't a sign of collapse. It's the simple collision of flu, RSV, and COVID all peaking at once, stretching households and hospitals to their limits. In the news and the big sip, we saw how quickly systems and people can fracture when everything becomes reactive. Nurses pushed past safe staffing, a Fed chair defending institutional independence, and societies throughout history reduced to labels that erase nuance and humanity. Our commemoration showed the opposite path. The National Geographic Society expanding curiosity, the first radio broadcast connecting distant listeners, and Theodore Roosevelt's peace diplomacy, proving that restraint can be as powerful as force. And we close with the handshake, a small reminder that showing up fully, without labels, without rushing, might be the most human corrective we still have. This is Dr. Robinson for the Brief Wake Up. Stay calm, kind, and curious. I'll catch up with you tomorrow.